I clicked the go live button. We'll see if we're live anytime soon. The screen is still black.
be the judge
The
of
screen is
that.
still black. Looks like it's loading. Now it looks like we're live. Hello. Welcome to On the Stick After Dark presents Inscryption spoilers.
We're
Star
gonna
Wars
spoilers.
story.
You shouldn't even be looking at the screen right now if you haven't played this game.
Yeah, listen, it won't mean anything if you haven't played the game.
And you should probably also not listen very carefully unless you want to be spoiled.
Oh no. Inscryption is a
want
cool
to play it, but
it's a cool game.
I don't think I'm gonna be able to like make time for it. So this is it. This is the game for me.
It's not that long.
Oh, okay.
You
well,
got time.
whatever. It's fine. I don't
It's
care.
like a 5-10 hours.
Generally, when
at
Alex
most.
says I won't.
He's
got to
play like 170
he
hours
will not
of Destiny.
make time for it.
Yeah, he has to play 170 hours of Destiny and Final Fantasy. It's fine.
While
That's
also
correct.
doing his homework and Final
I'm playing Final Fantasy right now.
Yeah, I know. Gross.
Shocking.
All right. Anyway,
You just got home
Inscryption.
from school, you gotta do
Hi,
your homework.
I'm Eric. I'm here with Mike
Hi.
and Kurt,
and I am also here.
and Alex
I don't
is
know
here
why-
hanging
I
out.
don't know
Hello.
why that happened to Mike.
I'm hanging out.
Hope he's okay.
He's speaking like a dude in Inscryption. All right. Well, I'm just gonna. I'll
Is
boot
he
up.
speaking like a stoat?
Fire it up at the beginning. Let's just
Yeah.
talk about the beginning first.
So what's
Hey,
This
Inscryption?
game goes some places.
Was a game that I saw in a trailer like last year, maybe.
I was gonna say I wanted to know, like, you guys basically strong-armed me into playing this, and so I had no idea anything about it until you guys started talking about it. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll play it.
I
So
guess
wanted
first
to figure
question
out-
then is, are you grateful?
I am. I enjoyed it quite a bit. If I wasn't, I wouldn't be on this because unlike certain drillings, I don't live to like come on and just shit all over something that people like.
What?
Are you talking about me? My
No,
last name's not
I just
Drilling.
figured I could make
Alex
fun
Drilling.
of him because he wasn't here. Yeah.
Anyways,
Wow,
yeah. So
I like drilling Rio.
yeah.
I want to say the trailer for this was recent, like maybe early this year or something.
Maybe.
don't know,
I
feel
think
like
there was a
know.
trailer for it at some point, and I was like, "Oh, that looks cool." And then this was included in the Steam horror game demo thing that they did at the beginning of October, and I checked it out then and played.
That's what
I
it
don't know,
was.
like
Yeah.
15 or 20 minutes of it on a stream for our 31 Nights of Horror feature, and then the
You
game
hadn't
came
even
out a
scratched the
couple
surface
weeks.
at that point. It turns out.
No, not at all. And then the game came out a couple weeks later, and I streamed a little bit of the beginning. And I mean, honestly, even if the game, there's more to this game than what you see. Well, even if you watch the trailer, right, you know that there's kind of more to the game than what you see at first, because the trailer shows like a guy.
A human being,
Yeah, like there's
not just a pair of squiggly eyes.
yeah, in the trailer, you know, there's like some FMV shit happening, but.
What?
When you first boot up the game, you just are playing a card game with a weird guy on a table.
Got them
I
creepy
read
eyes.
that you can't start a new game.
You
That's
cannot
correct.
start a new
Yeah,
game.
when you fire up the game, you have to continue.
Yeah.
Are you actually playing now, or is
Yes.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Man, look at this.
the
art.
first
I
weird
fucking
thing
love the
is-
art on these cards.
Yeah, look
I
at
do
the
too.
art's amazing.
The first weird
yeah.
thing is that you get that stoat card in your deck, and then at some point it starts talking to you.
Yep.
I mean, the first weird thing is the creepy cabin with the guy across the table, who's the only thing you can see is his eyes.
Yes.
I mean,
look at
I
the
guess.
scale. Like just all of the art in this game is pretty much amazing, especially in
Yeah.
in these sections.
Yes,
Mhm.
agreed.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to leap way past this, but I'll wait. Yeah. So it's a card game. Card battler thing. You're doing deck building. You're sort of, you have these two lanes. You're fighting each other. And you're trying to do damage to the person on the other table. That's what the scales are for. So as you do damage, you'll tip the scales, and eventually one
Its
side or the
suffering
other.
was real, but you will see it again.
Eventually it tips to one side or the other, and the game is over, and that person wins. Or the
Important
hand is
detail
over, I
that
should
you're
say.
passing over is that you're tipping the scales with gold teeth. And also what's really cool about this system already is that it's a push-pull system, which means that like it's not like you win when you do 10 points of damage. You win when you do 5 more points of damage than your enemy has done to you, which means that some tactics become viable that wouldn't make sense if you were just on like a standard life system.
Right.
Like sometimes it's worth it to sacrifice a card just because you know it'll do 3 damage before it gets killed, because that'll buy you the turn that you need to deploy something else.
It also heavily emphasizes OTK strategies. One turn kill strategies, right? So it's like your best strategy often in this game is to just
on the Kafka-esque. I don't know what the
figure out how to kill your opponent in one turn and then do that.
I
that's especially true, or that kind of idea is definitely embodied in the boss battles.
Yeah.
Because they can get pretty gnarly if they go too long.
I just want to say, for like anyone who hears like, oh, this is a roguelike deck builder game, like I know that there's a certain percentage of people out there who have a brain problem where they hear that and they don't want to play that game immediately. And they're like, no way, dude, I don't like card games, and I don't like deck builders, I don't like roguelikes. This is a super, I would say, a very easy one to get into.
It's very
card
accessible.
Game, yeah, it's very accessible, and especially initially not that complicated. They do eventually just pile the rules on to a point that is a little absurd, I want to say, by the time they're done.
But it rolls it out so slowly. They do a really good job at tutorializing it, and then giving you options. There are a lot of things in the game, but you can, or in the way the card game works, but it allows you.
You sacrificed me while I was sleeping. Yeah. It was the right play. I get it. Maybe you'll help me. This was the part of this game that.
As soon as this happens, you're just like, well, I'm not going to play not this now.
Yeah, I have to see I have to know what's happening in this game.
Also, I love that the stoat makes fun of you. Like
when you put him down, he's like, not there.
Bad play. So what Eric is doing here, right? You can play cards. The left side is their attack power. The right side is their health, and so you just sort of play all your play cards that you want to play that you can afford. They attack, and you end your turn, or you end your turn, then they attack, and then the other player does the same thing. The little blood drops that are in the top right are the cost when for characters where you have to sacrifice. So like that wolf that you see that he's played earlier. It has 2 blood drops. You have to kill 2 characters you've already played, or 2 cards you've already played, in order to play him. And so there's as you're saying, there's like a push-pull to that where or a risk reward where you're saying, well, I got to put these out there. They got to last long enough so that I can get this thing out, but then I have less cards in my lanes. So, I don't want to leave myself open. And then I guess the other thing that's clever about sort of the early game here is you essentially have 2 draw piles. You have a draw pile of squirrels, which are cheap and easy to play, but they don't do any damage. And you have a draw pile of other cards, which are where all of your sort of power comes from.
Where your deck is.
Yeah, that's where that's what you're actually building, is really that. And the squirrels just let you get going. And then the cards will also have symbols in the center that can have them, don't all have to have them, that do like modifiers for what they do.
By the time you've been playing for a little while, they're all going to have them, because you're going to do stuff like this. Take a card that has a useful sigil and sacrifice it to paste that onto another character. This game lets you crack it wide open. It lets you make some extremely broken decks. And that's, partially because it's not foremost concerned with providing you a card playing challenge, really. Like, this game is more interested in telling you a story. And it just so happens that the card game underneath is actually pretty fun. So, and it's kind of designed to be broken, and it's very satisfying to break. And there's a lot of different ways you can break it, because I've heard other people talking about this game, and they all did different things than I did. And I still felt like I had some completely overpowered decks by the time I made it to the end of this section.
Right. I mean, there's a bunch of mechanics that they don't really explain that well. And like there's like secret stuff you can do that just completely bust the game. There's a card called an Ouroboros, which every time it dies, it gets stronger. And so like if you continually sacrifice it throughout your run, you can get it up to like 15 like health. It's like a 2 mana 15/15 card or whatever. So you can play it pretty easily and just like one shot kill the guy. And then
Do you get Ouroboros in the first section of the
you
game? I
can
didn't get
you
one until
can
late.
yeah, you can get one here. I never picked it because I didn't realize what the mechanic was.
Right.
But you can actually
there's-
you can use that to like you can use that so when you die in this first section, the guy takes a picture of you and then you like make a custom card, and you can actually use like Ouroboros to like stack stats, or like you can make a giant Ouroboros and then give it cleave, which means that cleave cards can attack 2 lanes at once. So you can do like 300 damage to the guy at once and get like an impossible number of teeth and just like buy out the shop or whatever. It's definitely a game that rewards you for like learning the mechanics, and then like it provides you all the tools to like break the game, and is happy to allow you to do that,
to let you to do it. Yeah.
right, which is great.
Yeah, and you know, as you're playing along, like there's these sigils, as we were saying. There's a book in the he hasn't shown it yet, but you're actually inside a cabin in between rounds of the card game. When you're looking at that map, you can actually disengage from the table and walk around. And there's a rule book here. Also, he brought it up during the game, but it tells you what the various sigils do, mostly. But there are pages where you see the sigil, but it's all like covered in ink or blood or something. Yeah, and so even once you like start to get a card, if you get a card that has it, I thought maybe that would wipe it so that it would tell you how it works. It doesn't. It's just like, yeah, that's fine. Figure it out.
Stand up from the table, Eric. Let's talk
You
a
can't
little bit
until
about
you
the other
die
stuff.
once, I don't think.
Is that
You
true?
can't?
I don't think so.
I thought you could.
I can
Give
try
it a try once you're back
here.
on the map screen. So I mean, so
You can't
just
do it in
while
the middle
we're
of the game for sure.
no. So,
You
so while we're
can't- you
doing
can
high
until you
level
die
stuff,
once.
Oh, you got the mushroom already? Oh no, that's for later. Okay.
I didn't realize that you couldn't stand until you lost. I forgot about that. So anyway, while we're on the high level, I guess one thing that they don't really hide about this game that you find out relatively quickly, at least once you fail a run, is that there is a whole escape room sort of aspect to what's happening here, and that you can move around the cabin, and the cabin is filled with weird objects that look kind of like they came out of one of those iPhone The Room games, or like The Seventh Guest or something. Like a cuckoo clock with hands you can manipulate, or a safe, or like there's some statues and like knives and hammers and things, but they're all attached to the wall, and so you can't get them off until you kind of unravel some of the clues.
Yeah.
But your talking stoat pal will point you to the fact
It's somewhere
that there
in
is
this foul cabin. Be silent, or I will tear you to shreds.
There is a way. Yeah, there you go. He'll start pointing you to hints, like, oh, there's a safe code written in the rule book, and when you open up the safe, you find another talking card, and that lets you like solve some various puzzles and things in the cabin. And as you do that, you start to gain new options, like you might have seen the guy using a totem in the fight against Eric earlier, and you get your own totem, which lets you upgrade one of your classes of creatures by giving them a special sigil. And I think that's where the real game breakingness comes in for a lot of people. I don't know about you guys, but I got some. Oh, you go. Now I get to look around.
Yes.
I got a sigil on all my squirrels, and in fact, I think both of the times that I played using that thing, I buffed the squirrels, because the first time they gave me triple blood.
Yeah.
Well, there are different ways to do it, but yeah, the squirrels are great because you just get them all the time. So the first time I got triple blood. Was that?
And they're cheap to play.
Yeah. So I built an entire deck basically just around huge, super powerful cards, because every squirrel that I played got me 3 blood. And the second time I couldn't get that option, but I was able to find the one that lets you search through your deck for a card. So basically every single squirrel that I drew... Was that?
There's a creepy hand there.
Every single squirrel that I drew would let me also draw a card from my main deck, and I could choose exactly which one I wanted. And that's not even like the most broken combinations that you can have.
Yeah, I had when I beat this part of the game the first time, I had there's a card that's like a field mouse or whatever, and it's not real strong, but you can play it for cheap. And every time it dies, it puts another one in your hand. And I gave it another sigil, so it would automatically resummon the card. So every time something killed the field mouse, I just like had infinite field mice being played on the board at all times. So it was literally impossible for his guys to do anything.
It would put one on the board automatically?
Yeah. It was like there's like a card that's like a death rattle, play X from your hand. And
Right.
so like I would play the mouse, and then it would put another mouse into my hand. And so if the mouse died, then it would play the mouse automatically. And so it was like just like it was an infinite loop that
That's pretty fun. I've heard people putting like the Ouroboros ability to just reappear in your hand, putting that on a squirrel. So every time you sacrifice a squirrel, it just immediately goes back in your hand, which basically just gives you infinite mana. I don't know. There's a whole.
Does snuffing
lot of ways
those
you can
out
break it.
is that what gives you the smoke later?
yeah, it's
The
filling
ability
up
to do
that
the smoke.
little bell
Yeah.
glass. Yeah.
But they light up again later.
Yeah, you have to.
And I
I
wasn't
think
sure if
all
that-
three of them have to be lit up to do that properly. Something
Okay.
like that.
So I can remember.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things in this cabin that I never actually figured out, I want to say. If you go like where you sit down to play and you look at the wall and there's the
These
there's
things,
like
the
a
hammer
magic
and
wand
the...
and a hammer on the wall, I want to say.
I
Like,
don't
right-
know if
right-
you can get those in this mode, because like you get the hammer in the next mode that lets you
Right,
break
Yeah, I
cards,
didn't get anything
and then
from
the
those
wand
yet.
would be used against the magician. But I don't know if there are things you can use in this mode or not.
Okay,
It's
so
a
you
good
think that they're
question.
just like to hint towards the stuff that comes later on.
Yeah, it seems like you can click on them but
You can you can click on them. and
Yeah, they just kind of
yeah,
rattle.
They wiggle like you should be able to eventually do something, but yeah, I never did. Get
I want to
anything out
say,
of it either.
I think everything else in this room figured out. Like the cuckoo clock, you have to do to finish the section.
Yes.
The jar of goo is entertaining in its own way. Anyway,
Yeah.
why don't we talk a little bit about like some of the story stuff this game does, because it certainly does go to some places.
right.
I guess what I will say about Inscryption is that this game has the best first 4 hours of a video game that I have played in a really long time. This whole section at the beginning here is just dripping with atmosphere.
I
and
never
just, like,
realized
great-
before, but the mushroom appears for doubles, right? So that way when you
Yes.
see the mycologist, all right. Now
Yeah.
I could never. When I played this, because that
That's-
was before I did all that stuff with.
That's
that
what I
guy.
remarked upon. I was like, "Did you already get the thing?" And then I was like, "No, it's just indicating you just didn't know what it was before."
Right. See, I didn't
Yeah.
even realize. I never realized because I never thought about the mushroom again until.
Yeah, you were like, "What are these cards?" And
Okay, because yeah, there's a guy called the mycologist who'll like splice two cards of the same type together to make like a stronger version of it.
yeah,
Anyways,
but yeah, it's dripping with atmosphere, and there's everything is sort of well.
It's menacing
Integrated.
and
Yeah.
eerie. Like it never goes. I wouldn't say full on scary, but like it's disquieting. And like when you get to the boss fights like this,
Yeah.
the
Awesome.
soundscape just becomes
Yeah.
super oppressive and cool.
Yeah.
And
the clanking of the pickaxe and the rocks in the background,
Yeah.
making the
I-
beating out
I
the rhythm
love-
for the music.
I
and-
love when you go to see like either the bosses or like the trapper and that kind of stuff. Where there's a special character or whatever, like he puts on the mask and there's a different persona about it. Just makes it all the more kind of special that you're sort of doing this mode, and it's not just like, oh yeah, there's some cards and I'll pick one.
And the whole time you're playing this first section, I would say, like, you know, it has this weird, creepy vibe of like
He's
you know,
doing
what
the
happens if I-
prospector again. Easy boss. The mule's the key. Thanks, Stout.
Feel is the key. Yeah.
There's a creepy vibe at the first time when you're playing this, when you're kind of like, what happens when I lose anyway? Like this doesn't seem good. It seems like I'm in a bad situation.
Yeah, you're in this weird room and he takes a picture of you and you're like, this seems not good.
Well, certainly when you do lose, right, you find yourself kind of like face down by the door, and then he takes a picture of you, and you become a card, which is has certain implications to it, and you make up a death
Or in my
card
case,
that you
when
give
I
your
was
name.
streaming this with Joe became a card.
Eh,
So he's actually a flying deal 3 damage 1 cost thing that was actually pretty powerful.
That's
but-
pretty good.
Yeah.
Go
That's a
Joe,
good
that's a
card.
good card. Yeah. Yes. Anyway, so it seems kind of menacing. I would say the one thing that actually is kind of scary in this game is the self-harm that you can do to tip the scales in your balance.
So I actually got kind of stuck in this mode for a while, because the game sort of makes it seem like the object is to get out, which is not actually true, or at least that's not the end goal. But eventually you get a knife, and as you said, there's self-harm involved, and so it's like, well, you can use the knife to sort of get yourself out of trouble, and I kind of didn't want to use it. And so I actually played through a whole bunch and without doing it, and so I basically got jammed because I didn't get the eyeball to advance.
So the light version of that is the pliers, which
Yeah.
you use to rip a tooth out of your mouth and put on the scale, because the scale's weighed down with gold teeth.
Right.
And so the first time you do that, you're like, oh, like that was gross. That's not
gnarly.
cool.
Yeah.
So when you see the knife and you hear that, like, it'll tip the
Right.
scales for a cost, you're just like, oh, that seems really bad.
I don't think I want to pay that cost. Yeah. Exactly.
So I wound up playing the knife by accident. I was like looking at my items and I clicked on it by mistake, and then some stuff happened. I was like, ah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, you literally gouge your eye out and drop it on the scale, which instantly wins you the match, by the way.
Yeah, it's pretty useful.
Yeah.
And like you can only see like out of 2/3 of the screen, and there's like a haze of red around. And then because your adversary is sporting, he's like, well, look what I got for you here. And he opens up a box full of eyeballs, and you get to choose one. And, it's a fairly clear choice. There's like a bunch of regular eyes, and then there's this one that has glowing green runes on it. And it's just like, I mean, I got to see what happens when I do that. So
Right.
I assume just about everyone picks that as their first choice. And once you have that, then you start to see things written in this kind of like glowing invisible ink all around the cabin that you couldn't see before. And that's how you eventually, I think that's how you're supposed to get the code for the clock, right? Yeah, it shows up on the clock as to where you have to position the hands.
You can look in the rule book has there's all kinds of stuff hidden around the cabin. Actually, it gives you
there's a
clues
code in the
to
rule book for the
all kinds of
safe.
different stuff you can do.
Yeah,
but-
you got to open the clock to get the last card, I think. I don't remember.
Yeah, the last card, the wolf, the what is it? I can't remember what it's called. It's like the maimed wolf or something like that.
yeah.
Basically, a one-eyed wolf, and that's the last of the talking cards. So you wind up with the ferret guy, the stoat, the stink bug, and the wolf. And they also start to change as time goes on. Like they start to look different as you play more and more games. And so eventually what you find in the clock also is a roll of film for your adversary's camera. And then you kind of realize that what you need to do is to beat him and then put the film in the camera and take a picture of him the way he's been doing to you every time you lose.
Yeah.
And that is how you change this game into something else.
Right. And it's also worth mentioning that there is kind of like a meta layer happening in the background before you get to that point where you see these YouTube videos of this guy his name is Luke Carter. He goes by the username The Lucky Carter.
Yeah.
And he is a person that, and this is like a big thing on YouTube, right? He's just a guy
he's
that
like a
buys packs of
new
cards
YouTube
and
streamer,
opens
yeah.
them up and acts excited about what he finds inside. And he goes to a garage sale and buys some 3 packs of cards from a game that only got 1 print run and only ever had like the base game and never got expansions or anything, called Inscryption. And he opens up the packs, and in one of the packs there is a card with some GPS coordinates, like a longitude and a latitude written on it. and he goes to that location and he digs up just a floppy
3.5-inch
disk,
disc.
that he plugs into his computer, and that game is the game that you're playing.
Which is why there's no new game. The idea is that you put the disc in that you found,
And you're
and
playing
you have to continue whatever game was in progress
Right.
when it was found. And so from that point, does that happen just halfway through the section?
It happens during this section before you get to the next part.
What happens is the battery on his camcorder dies, basically, right? He's recording all this
Yeah.
footage onto his camcorder, and every once in a while the game's like, we need to show you some stuff,
Right.
so his camcorder battery dies, and then when the battery gets recharged, it boots up to the camcorder menu where you can see a bunch of different videos of this guy.
Right. Your role is somebody who is watching the videos that he made. And so you playing the game is more
Well, you
like
playing
you're
the game is
watching
him
him
playing the
play it.
game.
I don't think so, because that's why you can select those different videos to watch, right? Because at the very end, when the last thing happens, you're watching the videos of what happened. You're not being him, right?
Right, but when you're in the game part, like playing cards, I think you're supposed to be embodying him, because every once in a while he'll comment on the moves you make.
Does he comment on the moves you make, or does he just grumbles because something's bullshit, I think?
Well, at one point, it depends on which cards you take, or for example, you might lose a card or something. Like in the later parts,
And he'll
of the
go
game,
fuck,
you
I
lose-
didn't want to lose that one or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't think
my
he's
favorite line, which is always take Mantis King.
Yeah.
Mantis God.
Mantis
Mantis
God.
God.
The Mantis God. Well, actually, so they clue you into the fact that the Mantis God is like the OP card, because when he shows you the
the card unwrapping, he's like, I hope I get a Mantis God.
right. Most of these cards aren't worth very much, but a Mantis God's worth a couple $100 on eBay or something like that. So
Mantis God rules.
Mantis God rules. Cleave
does
is pretty
rule.
powerful. That's why they don't use it very often in Hearthstone. They mess around with a
And then
little
if you
bit.
really play your cards right, no pun intended, you can get a 3-way.
That was
Mhm.
intended.
Well, that's the Mantis God, right?
Yeah.
The Mantis God has the attack in all directions.
Yes.
Is it 3?
Sigil.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
what I couldn't remember.
The regular Mantis.
There are other
does 3,
cards
the
that have
Mantis God
2.
does 3.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
It rules. I guess I should mention that this game does some really. I mean, we saw some of the boss fights, and they're all different, and they're all kind of cool, and they all have kind of gotchas. When you kind of drain his first life bar, basically, he'll do something weird. The first time that you get to the fisherman, there's actually like a one-off special event, basically, where he's like, the text will actually go red, and he'll say "too fast, too soon," and he's basically mad that you've gotten good at the game as quickly as you have. And so he'll cheat, and he'll completely fill up his side of the board with these really powerful grizzly bears. And the first time that happened to me, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Actually, it only happens once, because the second time you get there, he doesn't do that again. But that's basically to force you into taking a loss, more or less.
You can beat that,
You can beat that.
as we
I
saw on
people-
the Waypoint stream with Rob and Natalie.
Yeah.
If
They
you
thought
have-
they were so hot, but they were just complete luck that they managed to be in the right place to beat that.
Right. to have the flying cards necessary to, like I said,
Have
because of the way that the health system in this game works, the most powerful thing you can do is go for one turn kill stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you can put down 5 or more damage on the first turn, you win. That's the way this game works.
You know the best thing in this whole game is
I
the fact that the trapper and the guy that buys the pelts is the same mask, just flipped upside down.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
I didn't notice that
That
part.
is good. That is good.
The first time that happened, yeah. So like if you flip this upside down right now, because like the other guy has it looks like he's wearing a scarf, and so when he's the trapper, it's his
Oh.
hat, and then you flip it over and it's his beard, and becomes the other guy's hair, and his hat becomes the other guy's scarf.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
It's really fucking good. There's all kinds of stuff like that in this game that I love.
Yeah. Also really good is the final confrontation that you get when you get to the end of the campaign with this guy, where after you kind of beat him, he's backed by the bright moon in the sky, and he turns around and grabs the moon and pulls it down to use as his final card, and it's just this huge card that takes up his entire side of the table. I actually tried to use both the scissors and the hook on the moon. You cannot steal the moon. I am sad to declare, but I tried.
So I generally did not try and push my luck at the fireplace.
Uh-huh. You
I
want to
think
know
I
a
did
secret?
it once.
You want to know a secret about this?
What's the secret?
If you feed them an adder or the tapeworm,
Yeah.
they die, and then every time you find a fire after that, you can use it up to 3 times for free with no potential cost. Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm confused about one thing. I didn't think you could reuse the fire. Every time I put a card on it, I would get a buff, and then I would leave. I didn't think that there was a way to.
You can't on the first run, but on subsequent runs you can.
I guess I didn't.
Yeah,
realize
it'll
that.
basically ask you to push your luck.
I feel like it never asked me that. That's weird.
And I was always like, no, those guys are shifty.
Because in my mind, it was just like, okay, it's like a set piece, but they never actually eat your cards, so whatever, who cares?
I did expect that you might be able to eventually do something with the figures that are sitting on the table near the door.
The extra ones?
Yeah, that somehow maybe you could do something, fiddle with those, and that would change the fire set piece or something, but it didn't. I did never see anything about that.
So anyway, you eventually get to the end of the game, and you have the film, and once you have those two together, you take a picture of this guy, whose name is Leshy, and that turns him into a card and ends this segment of the game, and you're able to go into the back room and find the new game button.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You basically restore the game.
Oh,
to
here,
its
see,
kind of
here's the
original
trapper.
state.
Or the guy that buys the furs. The trader, yeah.
Oh, you're right. It's the exact same.
It is
That's
the
great.
exact same mask,
Got
yeah.
like a Naruto ninja mask on.
Yep.
Got anything good in there? Regular mantis. I mean, if you got a black goat, a grizzly bear is a good choice.
I did grab a grizzly bear.
Oh.
I never went with a Gek, but
I don't know what Child 13 just comes back to your hand over and over again. Is that all that Child 13
it does not perish. Dude, I don't know. I could take it. I
oh,
never
Child
tried
13.
it.
Oh, it's like a cat, but how is that better than the cat though? Or is it just the same thing?
I don't know.
Feels like it's just the same thing.
Anyway, so yeah, once you get the new game button, you fire that up, and then it becomes a completely different game, right? More
Yep.
or less.
Yep.
It transforms
gonna
into
erase
like
your
a
game.
16-bit RPG card battler thing.
Yep.
Where you are
And
because then it tells you that like actually like this guy that is behind this table is one of 4 bosses from that card game.
From
4
that game.
scribes.
Yeah.
Yes, and he kind of took over. They're constantly fighting each other for supremacy, and whoever wins gets to be the person in charge of this part of the thing.
They want to transcend the game.
Yes.
And the 3 talking cards that you had are actually the 3 other scribes who have been turned into cards and who've been
By Leshy,
feeding you
yeah.
hints so that they could try and swing the balance of power back away from Leshy.
Yeah.
I will say, I think the second part of this game is not very exciting.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, the thing that like I was when I first got there, I was really worried that it was going to be super duper long.
Yeah, it is the shortest of the sections.
Yeah, and so it's it's got that going for it. I think I'm dead.
You could always waste your black goats and just have them tank damage.
Block
Unless
damage.
those
No,
enemies
you still have
fly.
to sacrifice to play the
Oh, they're
goats.
flying enemies. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I still have 1 more life, anyways. But yeah, so yeah, it becomes like this RPG where you're like wandering around a world map, and there's some like very very basic puzzle kind of stuff that you have to do, and there's like some talking to
each of the-
guys and.
Yeah, each of the 4 scribes has like a little stronghold, and inside the stronghold you have to do whatever is necessary before you can fight
You've
the
got to
boss.
beat 3 minions, and then you can fight the boss.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
You're tasked
it-
with picking a quest to pick who you want to replace as the leader of that area. And so I think that one of the things about that, there's like obviously, so they give you the obvious hint in the FMV sequences, right, that I mentioned about the Mantis God. Like, the best thing you can do in that section is build your deck around playing Mantis God, as many Mantis Gods as you can as quickly as possible, because it basically can just win the game in 1 turn.
Certainly 2 Mantis Gods would win the game basically right away. Or if you can power up the damage they do.
but yeah. Anyways, there's also that section also throws a whole bunch of other mechanics at you, right? So like when you first play,
So
when
it's a
you play,
little
you spend like
overwhelming.
somewhere between 2 and 4 to 5 hours probably playing this part of the game, where it's one. And when you get to that section, it turns out that these mechanics are like 1/4 of the mechanics in Inscryption. And then there's like a whole like mana summoning mechanic that has to do with one of the bosses who's like a magician. There's a mechanic where you can build circuits for robots that's based on the robot master who's the stoat in this part of the game. And then there's another one where you like when your guys die, they drop bones, and then you can use bones to summon monsters.
The
which
bones mechanic is in
this part, yeah.
Yeah,
but it's not.
The other ones aren't, but this one is.
But it's not like specific in the way that the bones in that
right.
part are. But you can. But the mechanics do intertwine in a way that makes sense. I think like you can. You can play cheap robots or cheap skeletons, but then you can sacrifice those to play the animals from the Leshy or whatever.
Right, that's what I was going to say. They give you access to these different families of cards.
Right.
And then you can start to sort of more customize. And as you go through the different strongholds, they're kind of focused on those kind of cards.
Yeah.
And there's a shop in each one where you can buy cards if you do overkills and all this stuff. So
it is a little overwhelming. I found
it's too much,
but
there's
2 systems to 4 systems, I guess, all at once.
Yeah, and it seems like I said, like at first I wasn't even sure that you could sacrifice a skeleton to summon a wolf or whatever. And you can do that. So the thing is about that section is that there's a pretty good like auto build a deck thing in the deck builder part, and I just used that, and all 4 of them
collecting a lot of cards.
Yeah,
and then you may have to tailor your deck depending on what the other characters are doing.
So the way that section plays out is actually much more like a Pokemon game. Like the first part of the game that we're seeing on screen is a roguelike, because you have to get through the whole run without losing, your 2 candle flames, basically. In order to win. And the second one, every battle is an island, basically. You show up, you challenge someone, and you just have to fight them over and over again until you win, or until you decide to go fight somebody else. So it is more complicated, but at the same time, the stakes are a lot lower because you never have to.
Too fast, too soon. 8 flying grizzly bears.
There you go.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I did not beat these guys.
Yeah.
Can I briefly say that at one point Eric said that if I played this game, I would eventually think that it was like too clever by half and be like, all right, now that you guys are talking about this half, I'm like, yeah, I can see that. I'm like, even at the time I was like, well, Eric knows me, I probably would maybe think that.
I think it's it's like the ARG stuff. I think that you would be most annoyed by. Like you're not like a frog fractions guy.
But
yeah.
We'll
see, because there is definitely a part of me that kind of wishes that, well, I do enjoy all of the weird meta stuff that happens. I kind of wish that there was just a version of this game where you just like play the 4 mechanics straight up and do like the basic thing for a couple hours against each of the bosses. Cause
I mean, we'll talk more later.
So anyway,
about
once
the other bosses, but you play there's a version of this that he's playing now for each boss. But the last 2, you play a bunch of this against Leshy, you play a bunch of it against the robot dude, and then at the very end of the game, you really briefly play one focused on the other 2 people.
Like 5 minutes each.
And those seem really cool.
And those seem like they would be really interesting. It'd be nice if you had
No, don't grab me.
the ability to just say like, today I want to play like in this version of the game.
Yeah.
I would love to have spent 3 or 4 hours in like the bone crypt.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That seemed awesome. Yeah. I don't really like in the one against the magician guy, you get like a palette where you're like battling and then it like summons. Anyways, we'll get there. So anyway, once you finish that second section,
Yeah,
second
you
section for
beat
me is
all
kind of
4
the
bosses.
That's
Yeah,
the low
sorry, go ahead.
point.
It's
For
the
sure.
doldrums.
That is the low point.
It's too much stuff. It's not doesn't have the atmosphere, and yeah, it's not super interesting.
I
But
thought
if
it was
you're
fine.
looking-
Like I said, the thing I was worried about when I got there was that it was going to be super long. But as it turns out, you can get through it like a half an hour or like an hour and a half or whatever.
more than that. I
Like
think.
an hour and a half. Yeah, I misspoke when I said a half an
An
hour.
hour
But
and
like
a half
90
seems-
minutes maybe.
Yeah, I
it's
felt like I
it's
spent
also
2
like the
hours there.
shortest section of the game.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, it's super easy because you can just tell it to build a deck. The hardest part is, I guess, figuring out which order do the bosses in. But there's
Doesn't
like a
matter all that
specific
much.
order. Like Leshy's like the easiest one because you're already familiar with his mechanics. And then I did the robot and then the magician and then the crypt lady I couldn't beat at first and then went back to her and crushed her.
I had it the other way around. I did the magician last.
Well, the real problem I had was that they ask you at the start who you want to go after, and then they give you that person's deck. And I picked the magician with like the mana, the moxes.
It's the most
and that deck
complicated
sucks.
one. Yeah.
I think that by far is the worst of the options.
Now
Anyway,
I chose the robot, and then when you finish that section, you beat all 4 bosses. Then they imply that you're going to replace them, and then it changes into a version more like this starting area, but you're against the robot instead, and you're in this lab.
Yeah. Well, so if you look carefully in the robots
wondered. Yeah, go ahead.
You'll see that he's got like robots doing work assembling things for him.
Yeah.
And you're in the game, Alex. And if you go down to the bottom, the very
You're a pretty
last
good
robot,
guard.
the very last robot digs something up. This would be a good time to watch.
Yeah, I'm switching out. I just finished a thing in the. Hang
If
on.
you go down to the bottom, the very bottom robot has been digging up pieces, and he finds one that's all weird and glitchy. And then the piece kind of gradually makes its way up through the assembly line until eventually the robot uses that at the end once you've beaten all 4 of the bosses and you're supposed to replace one of the scribes, and the robot pulls out this weird glitch thing and corrupts the game, and that's how you wind up in the 3rd section.
Yeah.
Right. So after you
I
beat...
thought
Oh, sorry.
When I beat the 2nd section, I went to the robot area, and I was like, oh, well, that's because I picked the robot. Holy shit, do they have 4 different areas after this 2nd section?
Right.
Depending on which one you pick. And then I asked Eric, like, well, who did you have? And he's like, I had this one. I'm like, oh, did you pick the robot? He's like, no. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, so
Oh, I
when
didn't
you
realize
if
it
you
defaulted to that.
Yeah, if you don't pick the robot at the end of the 2nd section, what happens is you go to the 4 stones, where you're supposed to like make the sacrifice to become the leader of that type of card, type of deck, and then the robot shows up and goes like, this is dumb. We're not doing this. We're gonna do this other thing instead. And then he what does he call it? I can't remember, the transcendence or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he initiates his transcendence and
Takes over the game.
takes over the game.
And you find yourself back in a situation similar to this, except that everything is like holographic displays and
Glowy
transparent
blue
stuff and
Yeah.
metal table instead of wood.
Yeah.
And at least initially, you're actually bolted to the table, like you're manacled to the table.
Yeah, you can't
and
get
you
up.
Can't get up. Although eventually that changes.
Yeah.
And so then you find out yourself face to face with P03, the robot who's also a stoat, who is very chuffed that he's finally getting to run the game. And this part I did like better than the middle, but it still was a little bit of a letdown because P03's whole thing is that he's all about gameplay mechanics, whereas Leshy was all about storytelling. And so he doesn't put nearly the same level of effort in to try and make the world feel as vibrant and spooky and lived in as Leshy does. And I just think that that's kind of to the game's detriment. I just think the whole first section is so flavorful. And the third one is like similar. You're getting up, you're trying to solve puzzles and stuff like that. But when you're in the game, they'll just be like, "Oh, here's the thing. You can just do this, whatever, so that the game works." Like, "Oh, I guess you can like repair robots or something. That way you can draw cards, whatever." He doesn't care about the world, and I find that kind of took away from my enjoyment a bit.
Well, he's basically trying to trick you into like giving him access to your computer so he can upload the game to the internet and like distribute himself
and
to
get
other
free,
people's
yeah.
computers.
That's
is,
the long con. But
right.
I just found that for me, the human being playing the game would have appreciated if he'd gone that extra mile, you know?
Yeah, I think
Dungeon Master.
I think the biggest problem is well, I don't know. I guess that seems in character for him, right? Because you now by that time you've interacted with him several times. Once as the Stoat, and then in the second area, and it's just like that's his character. So to me, that made sense.
I get that it's his character. I just think that it makes the section less fun.
I guess so. I don't know. I was fine with it. I think that the biggest problem with it, honestly, is that it's a little too long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the third, that section is more of like a traditional RPG in that you can't lose like you can in the first section, but you do have to make it like from checkpoint to checkpoint. But your deck gets bigger. You never go back to square one when you lose. You just keep building on what you had.
Right, because he doesn't want you to lose.
Although it does have the one thing I did like about that was that it can bring in variants to the game board, and so like you fight on a bridge, and so then the game area is only 3 wide instead of 5 wide to start. Although you can take the bridge pieces out, depending. But
you can use the hammer to break them or whatever.
Yeah. And that sort of changes how some stuff works, and so that was kind of a refreshing, adjustment. Although I agree that it's a little too long.
Yeah, well, I think so. What I did like about that section is, first of all, that there's all kinds of shit hidden all over the map that you're going down, right? So there's like in that section, instead of the laid out map that's like the path through the woods like this one is, that one is you're like on a grid, and you can choose to move north, south, east, or west. And a lot of times there won't be an arrow, but sometimes you can click to go to a section where there is no arrow, and there'll be like hidden things in there.
Yeah, like I found those.
No, there's a whole bunch of them.
Money or
old data.
Yeah, you find the data, which are additional videos.
So if we rewind back to the second section, actually what I could do is I could go back to the start screen. Actually, I forgot. I love this section of the game so much. I could just keep rolling through it. Or can I not?
It's just an incredible start.
Maybe I can't go back to the
press escape up in the top.
Oh, there we go.
No, it's the escape at the top of the screen.
If you just hit escape, it goes back. But yeah, so this is what the initialization. But anyway, so in the second part, there's actually a couple of secret things you can do. So one of the cards you find is like this half thing called like the obol. And you can find a right half and a left half. And if you play them both on the game board at the same time, they'll become one complete piece that like drops into your hand. And then you can take that and you can sacrifice it to this devil in the bottom of the crypt area. And he will give you a key that lets you do a secret thing in the third area. And then the mycologist, who's the guy
I didn't get that at all.
Yeah, this is all stuff that is... It doesn't have a lot of effect on the... so like this part of the game, this part of the second area is where it gives you like the background info and all the bosses, but...
Yeah.
But there's also... You can bump into the mycologist again, and you can get a key from him by doing a special thing that you can use in the third area as well to unlock a special boss.
I did get that key, I believe.
Yeah. But yeah, so then in the third area, there's like a bunch of secret stuff you can do. You can just play through it if you want. And it will give you the, just like the basic story of the robot trying to upload the thing to the internet and trying to
It's like super hot.
It's a little like super hot, yeah. Where like the game is trying to upload itself to Steam to get on more people's computers in order to like propagate itself and like pull more people into the game or whatever.
Yeah, so in that section you have one fight, one of the boss battles where you use the
yeah.
Leshy's camera to take
the fucking
shots of the game.
Oh man, the boss battles in the third section, for anything that negative you can say about like the general presentation not being as good as the first, or the fact that it's a little too long, the 4 boss battles, especially the last 2, are fucking incredible.
I don't remember what one of them was. I know there's the one with Leshy's camera where you're taking pictures of the screen at different moments.
Right.
The other early one.
I forget what the other early one is, but the third to final one is you're like he's trying to gain access to your actual computer, and so like the guy gives you all these options to like what was the code? I forgot. But so you can I'll get out of here. It's the second section.
273.
273. Yeah, that's all right. I'll go right to this part. But you can so like he'll ask you to like pick a big file from your computer, and then it shows you the actual file browser for your computer. It's how you do damage to them. So like you can pick I picked like an 8 gigabyte video file.
I picked the Kaizo speedrun.
I think mine might have been the archive of one of our Game of the Year streams.
Oh man, that would be big.
Yeah, like I said, it was like 8 gigabytes or whatever. And then there was also one where he wants you to pick like your oldest file, then he threatens to delete it.
Yeah.
And then it actually, if you lose that, then I guess it actually puts like a .txt file in your, it puts a TXT file in that folder. And if you open it up, it just says, be a good sport and delete the file, which is, fucking incredible. And then the very final boss is against, the internet, the robot that connects to the internet, and her name is Golly. And she's like
never used the internet before.
She's never used the internet. She's super innocent and cute. And she finds like a picture of a bowl and turns it into a card. And
she starts pulling in your Steam friends, and so you're fighting against your Steam friends with their avatars.
Yeah.
And pictures for the cards.
Yeah. And I fought Eric, and his card was a bastard.
All 3 of you guys were there for me.
It was like 112 or something, and I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this?
And instead of a mole man, here's a picture of an actual mole. So now you got like this JPEG instead of a drawing of a mole man on the card.
Great joke. Yeah.
And so you're like in one of the fights you're taking screenshots for the game, and one of the fights you're giving them access to your files, and the other one you're connecting to the internet. And the idea is that the robot wants to upload Inscryption, the game, to the internet with this version where he's the one in charge.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why that's bad, which is where we start to get into the ARG elements a little bit of this game.
Right.
Which is only fairly mildly hinted at in the stuff that you see, like in the video bits that you can see with Luke Carter. You kind of get a little bit about it. It's like, okay, there was this woman working for a video game company in like the 80s or 90s.
Game Funa,
and then she died, and but somehow you wound up with the cards that she owned, and so basically she's the one who pointed you to
the implication is that you bought her deck, her like packs from the garage sale. The lady that you bought them from was her mother.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he talks to her on the phone.
She points you to where this buried diskette is with the only known copy of Inscryption, the video game. And then somewhere in there, they start hinting that there might be something like truly evil buried in the game's code, kind of underneath all the stuff that you're seeing. And you start, and Luke Carter gets like menacing visits from like staff from the game company who are poking around his house and trying to get him to give back the disc and things like that. And I don't know if the arc has concluded at this point. At one point, I stumbled on like a long document, but that was before people had seen the end of it, and they were, finding clues throughout the game that let them decrypt files that are hidden in the game directory, like. if you remember the first section, there's like lightning flashing through a door, and all you can see is the flashes. Well, it turns out the flashes are in Morse code, and
there's one part where
Really?
there's like a code written on a napkin or something in one of the videos. Like there's a bunch of videos that are corrupted, but there's one of them where there's like some code written on it, and then like that code led to like unlocking some encrypted files that were included in the direct games directory. That's where those keys, like where I mentioned about sacrificing the obol to the bone lord and getting the key. When you use that in this game, you fight a boss, and then it gives you this stuff called old data that shows up, and like it's just like random files that appear in this game board, and then you can use that to read what happened to the it gives you some background information on the lady that that you got the cards from. And then also the thing that started the ARG was that the coordinates that you got where Luke dug up the disc, there was actually a disc hidden there. And so people, like somebody went and dug up the disc, and then that was what kicked the ARG off of. And then you could also, like, I think there's a Google Doc where the people that played the ARG kind of documented everything. But then there was also like, in one of the encrypted files, there was like a website you could go to that was like a fake Game Funa website, and you could actually order copies of the game from there. So a bunch of people got in the mail like actual hard discs that had stuff hidden on it. And
It sucks, man.
nah, man, it's fucking great. I'm not interested in playing an ARG, but I love
reading about them.
I love reading about them. I think it's really fun when kind of games break out of their thing. I think at this point it's not as exciting as it was, when during the like early days of the Frog Fraction stuff, or in Fez or whatever, where it felt like the game was kind of like, like popping out of its disc and kind of like grabbing people and like dragging them around or whatever. But it's still cool. I think this game does it just about as well as just about any other game that I've seen.
It is a little bit too bad because I've played enough games now that do the whole like we're changing everything up on you thing that like it doesn't hit as hard as it could.
Yeah.
If I played this game 10 years ago, it would have blown my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely I don't think it does the like fourth wall breaking stuff quite as well as There Is No Game from last year.
Yeah.
I don't know if Kurt agrees with me or not, but
yeah, I agree.
Especially because when you get to the FMV sequence and There Is No Game, like, right, because like that game does a bunch of like clever stuff with game mechanics where it's like pulling you in and out of the game world, and then it just like goes into the real world, and the weird narrator guy is there. It's just like
yeah, and then you like eventually you start screwing with his
his phone and his computer and stuff
like that, and his phone. Yeah.
I thought that stuff was all really good.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Agreed.
Anyway, so once you get to the end of this guy's section and you enact the Great Transcendence, and he's about to upload everything to the cloud, but you've had a chance to sneak off into his kind of weird empty factory, and there's a place where you can confer virtually with the other three scribes in like a cyberspace kind of zone, and they come up with a plan to stop him, which basically involves ripping his head off. So
you distract him and they sneak up on him.
Right as he's about to upload everything to the web, Leshy comes up and literally tears the monitor off of its base. And that's it for P03. He's done. And at that point, what's her name? Grimora,
yeah.
Grimora,
The creeper.
The bone lady.
He's showing you your own face through your webcam.
Your own Luke Carter's
Also,
face.
there's a bunch of mechanics in this where you get to make cards that I really, really enjoyed, where you get to like print your own cards. I made like the Tootbot 2000 or whatever, and you get to pick like a weird face and stuff. I liked all that stuff.
I liked that,
Yeah.
So Grimara notices that the bad, like evil data is on the disc, and
You're a
like,
stupid idiot gamer like the rest.
And she's just like, hey, you know what? I got access to your computer. I'm just going to erase this whole thing. And
that's
then
the only way to be sure.
Which, in fact, does not actually solve the problem because it doesn't erase, I think, the old data, the bad whatever the bad juju is on this diskette. But it kind of stops the game from being uploaded to the server and given to everyone. Although if I understand correctly, the ARG actually shows that in the end it did get uploaded.
Where Leshy rips his head off. Anyways, yeah. But so that stuff all plays back into the ARG, where, and also into the previous games that I should have looked up this guy's name before.
Daniel Mullins.
Yeah. So he made a game that came out quite a few years ago that was also in this vein called Pony Island, which Pony Island it's basically like a cutesy platformer arcade game that is like haunted by Satan.
Yeah, don't give me too many details because I think I might actually go back and play that one.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't need to give you all the details, but like the basic thing of this and the result of the ARG is that the old data on this disc is it's like a demonic card game with its roots in like ancient German mythology. And
yeah, like Leshy is apparently some sort of reference to a German sort of.
Right. There's actually a reference to a card game from like pagan, like German paganism or Germanic paganism from like however many hundreds of years ago. But so this old data, which is like this demonic card game that got transcribed into Inscryption, the video game, was like the way it got to America was that there were like, during the fall of the Third Reich, there were these like Russian spies that came across Hitler's body, and in Hitler's hand was like clutching this demonic card game, and then they took it, and then it got moved. Yeah, exactly. And then it got moved from somehow it ended up in Game Funa's hands, and they put it into this disc to kind of like bury it. And so like the reason that you are trying to like stop it from getting uploaded is it so that this like demonic card game doesn't end up all over the internet. That's why Gromora wants to destroy the game. And then it turns out that man, this stuff's so good. It's like, I love this. This ending of this game is so great.
The ending is very strong.
But then, and then at the very end, the lady, the bounty hunter lady from Game Funa shows up and blasts Luke Carter in the face and takes the disc because she doesn't want the
well, also Luke accesses the contents of
old data. Yeah.
And you see him kind of freaking out and trying to smash it with a hammer, and then she shows up and shoots him in the head and takes the disc away.
Yeah.
Yep.
I will say I didn't feel super satisfied by the conclusion to the video stuff, because I guess they want you to finish the ARG out. It seemed a little truncated in what you actually play. But all this section where you're in the game is just superbly done.
Yeah.
Now you get to go on a brief little tour through the worlds of the 3 remaining scribes, and just like it's amazing that they made these. It's amazing that like you're gonna actually get to go into this 3D crypt and play a version of the card game using the bone system with like all different art, and it's like, you made this and I get to play it for 3 minutes. What are you doing?
It's awesome.
Yeah, why
also, there's a thing you can do with the ooze guy. There's like this little oozy man that is like hanging out that was made by the magician.
Do not release.
And I don't know, like you can get into his world using one of the keys. And you can like visit him, and he like made this painting of the magician. You can tell him to you can tell him to like show the painting to the magician. And it will like he'll go, okay, I'm gonna tell him how much I care. Maybe he'll care about me too, but it never really pays off. I don't know if I missed this step someplace or what happened, but it was one of the few weird things in the game that didn't really kind of pay off at all. Yeah.
I don't know. The goo guy's in a bottle in Leshy's cabin, and it says
he gives you some
do
tips.
Not release.
Yeah.
And he's
you can talk to him a bunch.
He mostly complains about the pain.
Yeah.
and he's one of the pupils in the second part of the game. One of the what's his name, Magnificus's pupils. And then in the third part of the game, he winds up in like a pipe, and he's kind of like, "Oh, I kind of like it here."
Yeah.
The pipes,
Yeah.
It's squeezed from all sides, like it doesn't hurt as much. I thought that was nice.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Man, I love this part. I love like when it's signaled that it's the next turn.
Yeah, you pull
you tap on the table
Yeah.
to do damage. I think. How does it work? I forget. The tombstone.
The cards tap on the table to do damage.
Oh yeah. Like, I really want to do some more of this. This part's great, and it lasts for like literally, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes, and then you get to do it again with the Magnificus thing, and that's a whole different thing where all the creatures come to life in 3D.
The way the scale skitters is really good.
Oh, I didn't notice that before.
See the way it's like little hands move back and forth. Yeah, it's really good.
I did not notice that.
So I don't know. They were saying on Nextlander, I think that because there were so few bugs, the developer is planning on adding features to the game. So I wonder if they're gonna maybe flesh out this and the Magnificus version.
Yeah,
it would seem like a shame to have all this stuff and not do much with it.
I mean, well, so like the Magnificus one in particular would require a lot more. Like they only made a few of those models, so it would require way more art in order to.
They're not very detailed models, if we're being
No,
honest.
but it still is. That's a lot of work to make all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I would happily. I mean, if there's just another one of these where I could give them some money to just play it, I would happily do that also. Like I paid $20 for the version of this game that just has like the 4 card games in it.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that the next thing that this person makes will probably continue the.
There's a third game he made in between Pony Island and this called the
I never
Hex.
played that. Yeah.
The impression I get is that it's also
Yes, it
got
has.
a
It's in that
whole meta.
continuity of
Yeah.
haunted video games or whatever.
Yeah. You can actually get a bundle of all 3 of his games. So I threw down for the other 2 after I played this.
Pony Island is part of one of the itch bundles.
Yeah.
Is it?
The super mega bundles. Anyway, I'd like to play that at some point if it does kind of fun stuff like this.
It's okay. Yeah, it's. I mean, the problem is right that on those other 2 games, the mechanics just aren't nearly
They're
as
not
good
fun
as
to play
they
just on
are in
their
this
surface.
game. Yeah. I mean, also like Pony Island came out in a time where there wasn't a lot of games that did stuff like this, so it felt like a bigger deal back then.
I don't know. As someone who likes idle games, a couple of the idle games that I've played have been doing stuff like this for a long time, like Candy Box and A Dark Room. They're all games that kind of their whole deal is this: like you start playing a game that looks like one thing, and then after an hour, it turns into a totally different thing.
Yeah,
It's spooky.
it's very spooky.
I mean, Candy Box and A Dark Room are not very spooky, actually. They just totally change what you're doing as they go on.
Oh, well, I thought we
They
were saying
contain
that.
multitudes. Anyway, yeah, so I guess my only real complaint with this game is that I just think the first part is so strong, and I don't think that much else matches up to it, except for maybe this ending sequence.
Yeah, this ending sequence is amazing.
But in between, there's the 2 hours of the 16-bit game and maybe 4 hours of P03's game, and that's good, but it's not as good as what you start with. So
Yeah, I felt like
I agree.
the bosses in the P03 stuff was good enough to.
Those parts are good.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just play a whole bunch of other stuff that isn't.
This is so amazing. This part where she does the boss thing, and then it plays the pirate music, and
oh, I forgot about
Yeah.
that. And then their mask disappears.
this game is great.
Yar.
This is a great game. This is
It
a
is a
very
really
very
great
fun
game.
card game with really amazing art, and it does a lot of clever stuff. And I love this part where you shake, especially when you shake Leshy's hand, where like his scale disappears, and he's like, "It's fine. Let's just play another round." And I don't know.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who wins.
Yeah. Anyway,
It's a nice coda on it.
yeah.
So yeah, Inscryption's pretty cool.
Inscryption's very cool.
I expect we'll be talking about this one in a little while when you get around to the Game of the Year stuff.
Well, 3 of the 4 people just said that they really liked it, so yeah, I think.
Well, I really like the beginning of it, and then the rest is fine, but
it still counts.
4 hours are so good. It's been really fun to watch Natalie and Rob playing this at Waypoint.
Yeah.
Getting that sea monster out.
I never messed with the sea monster.
Yeah, the whole first section went, like, I got through it relatively quickly, and there were a bunch of the weird cards that I never really got to play with. Like, what is it? There's a mysterious cave, and you can sacrifice something to get one of the stranger cards.
Yeah, there's the douse or whatever, where it summons 2 bells, and I never got to mess with that very much. I didn't really know what that did. What else was there? There was like did you play with the strange larva at all?
I didn't. That's the one that turns into Mothman, right?
Yeah, after 3 turns it turns into Mothman, which is like a flying 3 attack thing or something. I don't know. I loved it. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it goes 3 and then 7, I think.
I had a really fun round with Urayuli, the 7/7
4 mana
kind of Yeti looking thing.
Yeah.
Because that was when I had all my squirrels were worth 3 blood, so it wasn't very hard to get on the board.
Yeah, that's the problem with some of the really powerful cards. It's going to be hard to get them out.
Yeah.
Unless you have something like that.
But yeah, and all the ways you can mash cards together to make better cards. Like that's the thing that really, like, this game would be pretty cool if it was just like the basic, all the other stuff, but the mechanics of it are like good enough to carry it through in a way that maybe they didn't really need to be. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, much better than they needed to be. Although I will say, not at all balanced. Like,
no,
I don't think that you can make a 2-player version of this game without completely changing how things work.
I mean, it's not designed for that. So
no, it's fine. It's fine. It's great.
Yeah.
But like, if you printed out all these cards and said, "Let's play a round of Inscryption," you know, chances are it would really suck to play against another human being unless you went first.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, well, right. You make broken decks, and he cheats constantly, so.
Yeah, it was good. Really great experience. I imagine that lots of people will be talking about this one by the time the year's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and probably including us. I don't know exactly where it's going to come in my thing, but it's definitely in the upper echelon of games that I played this year.
Get that moose going.
I will now.
Moose buck.
He's a big boy. I don't know. I never really messed with the mechanics that let you move cards around too much.
I didn't like the idea of having all my cards move without me telling them to.
Yeah.
Especially because, like, a lot of the time I would use the Mantis cards and I would steal its sigils so that I had creatures that attacked in both directions. And sometimes it was really good to be able to attack obliquely for, like, you know, like there's a really dangerous enemy on the one side and you don't want your guy to get hit.
Yeah,
So.
I used. You could use that in those areas where, like, you were fighting on a bridge. You could stick it on the side, where it couldn't get attacked, and you only got one side of the attack, but you essentially got a freebie each time. That couldn't be covered.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah,
this
it's
is
the card game that wants you to break it.
Yeah.
Yep.
The triple triad of
Yeah.
roguelikes.
It's the current Hearthstone arena of. Spare me and
I guess
whatever
we
is
should at
left.
least see the section.
Yeah, so it was kind of. I don't know. It's like a sentient magic paintbrush using Christmas tree. I don't really.
With one eye.
Yeah.
Because apparently Leshy took his eye at some point.
Right, because that's how you can see the special paint and the implication being that it's his eye that you put on.
Mm-hmm. palette. I really did not enjoy using the mock system cards.
I think they're like a mechanic that's not explained that well.
Yeah.
Also,
You end up having
there's
to
just like
kind of get forced to learn it in this mode.
There's also too many of those cards that just literally disappear if you lose your mock. So if one of your squares gets attacked, you can lose your entire hand, or your entire side.
There's kind of like not enough board space. I feel like this should be like at least 5 lanes, like the way that the computer
there's
one
too
was.
many. You have to power up with cards that just take up space,
right?
And then if you get screwed by them, then you lose other stuff. So you can end up just snowballing really badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you get wiped because they destroy your moxes, then you have to spend 2 or 3 turns worth of cards just to get anything back on the board because you only draw 1 card.
Yeah, and in the meantime, they're kicking the shit out of you.
It's probably why this part of the game didn't get made the whole way.
Yeah.
You've allowed my goo mage to be deleted as well. I thought you two were becoming friends. I don't know. I need to find out more about what could have happened with the goo mage. I need to know. But yeah. Anyway, Inscryption. It's great. You should have already played it by the time that you listened to this, but
you should have.
It's probably even if you had it all spoiled, probably still worth playing because the mechanics are dope.
And just the atmosphere, man. Just soak in it. It's great.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for this week. So, goodbye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.